Let's give 2 more minutes for the others to join and then we can start the session. Alright, good evening all. So just a recap of yesterday's session, what we have discussed is we have looked at record types and we have looked at the list views. Right, we have looked at record types and list views in our yesterday's class, and in today's class what we are going to look at is we are going to look at security model of Salesforce. We are going to look at security model of Salesforce. Alright, so far we were having so many questions that why am I only giving the access to system admin, or how exactly giving access to system admin will resolve all the issues, or how exactly this access just giving to the system admin is helping me work. Alright, so we had so many questions on the profiles, why we are just giving access to system admin when we are creating an app. We were doing everything for only one profile called system admin. Alright, in today's class, most probably in tomorrow's class, today and tomorrow's class, what we'll get is we'll get to know the understanding of how exactly this profile is basically behaving and how it is controlling the access that a user can get in Salesforce. Alright, that is what we are going to look at today. Alright, today and tomorrow's class we are going to focus on how this profile and other elements, other concepts in Salesforce, how they are driving the security model in Salesforce is what we are going to look at. Alright, that is the roadmap for next 2 days. Alright, now, so if you ask me how the security model is being driven, alright, we have a org level security. Alright, let me just do one thing. Alright, so you have an org level security. Let's say if this is your org, you will have a username and a password to this org depending on how many users that are using your org. Right, for a developer edition there could be 2 users who can be using that org. Alright, so depending on who are the users, you have an security model established saying that only people who have access to this org can log in into the system. Alright, people who are having the access to the org, they can only log in into the system. Alright, I cannot log in into your system until unless you create a user in your org for me. Alright, until unless I am a user to this org, I will not be able to log in. Alright, the clear example to that is you cannot basically log into my org until unless I create a user for you. Alright, and I cannot do the same for your org. I cannot log into your org until unless you create a user for me. Alright, that is your first level of security. And what is the second level of security? Once you log into your org, once you log into that org, there is a second level of security that is nothing but your application. That is nothing but your application. Alright, there is a second level of security called application. Alright, so even though you enter into your org, only the apps, only you can see the apps that are basically given to you. We'll understand how we can give access to these apps. For time being, what we are trying to understand is what are the security levels that we have in Salesforce is what we are looking at. Alright, so even though if I am a user and I've logged into this org, I cannot see all the apps that are there in the Salesforce. I cannot look at all the apps that are there in Salesforce. I can only see those apps which are basically assigned to me or basically to which I have access to. Alright, so that is your second level of security model. And what is the third level is even though you have access to your object, Even though if you have access to your app, you cannot see all the objects. It depends on how many objects that are given access to you. Alright, let me just change this. Right, even though if you have access to the app, you cannot see all the objects, because it depends on how many objects do you have access to that, how many objects you have access inside that app. Inside your app, there would be 10 objects. That means there are 10 tabs that are created to that objects. If your user has only access to the 5 of them, you can only see or access only 5 of those objects. Alright, so that is your object level security. And if I go down, once I have the object level security, I have another security where I have list of records inside that object. Right, that object basically helps me store those records. Now this level of security basically talks about whether I can access and see that record or not. Alright, so once you are into your org, you can see only those apps that are given access to you. Once you have access to an app, there could be chances that only few objects will be exposed to you. Once you have an object, there is another kind of a layer or a security layer which basically talks about how many records you can see. Alright, how many records you can see. Alright, not all the records that are there in the system should be exposed to the end user. Depending on what is his need, we'll expose those records. Alright, we'll understand each and every concept in detail. For now, I'm just giving you an kind of an overview how exactly this security model is laid out. Alright, now let's say if I am into that org, now if I am into that record, I have basically access to one of the record which I'm looking at. Now this record can also have a security, right? Record inside the elements of that record can also have a security where it says I can only see this field if I have access to it. I can only see this field if I have field level access assigned to me. Alright. In short, once you have access to your org, once a user can have an access to an org, he can enter into that org, he can see only the apps that are basically visible to him, and once he has access to an app, he can only see certain set of objects depending on what level of access or how many objects are basically exposed to him. Right? Once he has access to an given object, he can look at certain set of records depending on what level of access that he or she has. Alright, so that is your record level security. Once you open any individual record, it depends on how many fields you can see depending on your security aspect. Alright, so this is how your entire security model in Salesforce is being laid out. Alright, depending on what all things that are being assigned to you, only those things you can see. Right? Why we are doing this? If you ask me a simple question like that, there could be a customer support guy, there could be a technician person, there could be a sales rep, Alright, not all people need all things. If he is a sales rep, he doesn't need to see work order records or case records. If he's a technician, he don't want to worry about what is the quotation that is being generated and all. Right? Every person that is working in the organization, they have certain rules. Alright. So for them, it is not necessary that we need to expose all the information to them. Alright. We'll understand this concept in detail. For now, this is what you can basically understand just by looking at the security model layers. Alright, these are the layers how you can basically stop the user from accessing the data that he or she should not basically look at. Alright, if you want to basically restrict that field, you can basically use the field level security. If you want to restrict the records, you can use the record level security. If you want to restrict the object, you can use the object level security. If you want to basically restrict the app, you can basically use the app settings where you can basically remove the access for that particular profile. If you don't want to allow him into the org itself, deactivate that user and he or she will not be able to enter into the org. Alright, that is the high level discussion of our security model. Alright, now From now, what we'll be doing is we'll be taking one module, right? So this is how the security model has been defined. We'll be taking one element and we'll be looking at each and everything that we need to know, right? And once everything is done, we'll just go through the entire procedure to see how it is basically impacting the changes. All right. Now, what is the first level of security that we need to know? The first level of security we need to know is org level security. Org level security. All right. Now, what all things that we can do in order to restrict the org level access? First thing is you can basically remove that user if you don't want to allow him. And other set of things that you can control using your org level security is, first one is network access. Second one is password policies. All right, it is a kind of an added security is what I say. All right, how to basically configure these two items? Click on your setup and search for, in the quick find, search for network. Right, under administrator security controls we have this network access. Click on it. All right, here what we can do is we can basically restrict the users from accessing this org outside an IP range. All right. So if this is an IP spectrum, and if you want your users to access this org within this IP range, what you can do is you can basically make sure that you configure this network access. All right. If you want your users to only access your org within this IP range, what you need to do is you need to basically enter the start IP range and end IP range in these values. All right. So what happens is if he is accessing outside that IP range, he or she will not be able to get into that org even though they are entering the right username and password. All right. Even though they are accessing outside this IP range with the proper credentials, username and a password, he or she will not be able to enter outside that IP range. All right. So this enables us to restrict the people using our org outside that IP range. Let's say if I have a company where I want to basically make sure that the data that is being entered or the org that can be accessed should be within that organization, within that office, then what I can do, I can basically set up this IP range where I'll say that this is the starting IP range of my office and this is the ending IP range, and inside this IP range anyone connecting to this org should be a right person. If someone like he or she is basically accessing the org outside the IP range, I don't want to allow them into the Salesforce. All right, that is how you can basically restrict the users even though they have a proper username and password. How to configure this network access? Click on this new button and enter a start IP range and mention the end IP range and click on save. All right, so that is how you can basically restrict the people entering into your org outside your IP range, outside your actual office IP range. All right, that is one security aspect that you can configure. All right, currently I don't want to do that because I want to use my org anywhere. Right, if you want to basically try that out, you can basically enter the starting IP range and the end IP range so that you can access only in a certain area where you have that IP access that you have configured for. All right. That is first level of security that you can do in your org-wide security model. And the second one that you can do is you can also make sure that the password policies are being followed. All right. What is this password policy? After setting up the IP range, all right, if in case you want to make sure that the username and password are, let's say if you want to make sure that the password that the user is entering is strong or not, if you want to kind of configure such kind of configurations, this is the place where you can do that. All right, so you can also make sure that your end user basically enters the the password in a way that you want. All right, so what I'll be doing is I'll click on setup, search for password, and under administrator security control I have this password and policies. All right, once I land onto this page, what I can do is I can set the password restrictions. That is the right word. I can set the password restrictions and log in logout policies for all the users. All right, login and logout policies for all the users. All right, so what exactly this page is letting us configure is, it is asking me within how many days do I want the password to auto expire. All right, so there is a configuration that is there in Salesforce where you can define within how many days you want your end user to basically change his password. All right, so this changing of a password, make sure that your org is not being compromised. All right, your org is not compromised. As if you can keep your number of days within which the password needs to be expired as minimum as possible, that is where you can make sure that your org is not compromised by any of your user. All right, so password can be expired automatically within 30 days. If I select this option, depending on your need, you can basically set that option. All right, you can basically set that option. All right, that is your first option. What is the second option? Now the password has been expiring every 90 days as per my configuration. What I'm asking the system to do is, I don't want the end user to basically enter the previous password again, right? If the password has been expired, intelligent people like you, what they'll do is, they'll basically, you and me, what they'll do is, they'll re-enter the same password that they have given earlier, all right? In order to stop that, Salesforce, what it is doing is, it is basically helping me configure that setting also, where we are asking Salesforce to basically remember the 3 previous passwords that I have entered. All right, so if my password has been expired, now I'm trying to change my password. Now what I'll do, I'll basically enter the same password that I've used previously. Let's say this is the first password, this is the second password, and this is the third password. Now, if my password has been expired, I'm basically using the first password here. All right, first password here. Salesforce will not let you save that password. Right, Salesforce will not let you save that password because it is matching with the previous data. It is matching with the previous password that you have entered. Where is that setting? We are asking the Salesforce to remember the 3 previous passwords that are being entered by the user. If you want to increase the security, you can basically ask the system to basically remember till how many passwords? Till 24 passwords. Right? It would be too much, but 3 or 4 is a good kind of a security option that you can select. All right. Now what happens is, if my password has been expired, if I enter any passwords that I've used for the 3 previous times, system would not allow me to save that information. Now the user is forced to enter a new password so that he or she will be using a new set of a password rather than reusing the items that he or she might have used previously. Right? That is this setting. And now the third setting basically talks about, now we have asked the password to be expired and we have made sure that the previous passwords are being saved and checked when the user is entering his information. All right. The next setting that we have is, how much length do you want the password to be? How much length do you want the password to be? All right. As if you can make sure that the minimum length of the password is greater than 6 or 7, that is what you can call it as a good password. All right, you can also have a option to increase this number to whichever number you think that it is possible. All right, it is always a good practice to keep it between 6 to 8. Anything above that, the user would not be able to remember that password. The main idea of basically restricting him will be permanent. All right, make sure that you don't increase that minimum number of password to maybe 15 or 16. That would basically create a confusion for the end user to basically remember his password. All right, now you have defined the minimum length of your password. Now Salesforce is asking me, what should be the complexity of your password? I have an option saying that it should either include an alphanumeric character, or you have an option where you need to make sure that the end user is entering alphabets, numerics, and special characters. If you want to make sure that he or she is entering a capital and small case, you can also enforce that just by selecting this setting. All right. If you want to enforce all, you can make sure that you select all. The last one, which says must include 3 of the following: numbers, uppercase, lowercase, and special characters, even though your length of your password is set. Alright, I'll be keeping it as alphanumeric for now. If in case your business wants to be very specific on this password, you can toggle around with this passwords. Alright, now what are other things that we need to look at is, this is another important point, which says maximum invalid login attempts. If user somehow is trying to basically enter random passwords and he want to basically see if he or she can basically crack into Salesforce, alright, we can put a limit saying that these are the maximum number of tries that I'll give you before or basically locks your username and password. Alright, the maximum number of tries that you give to an end user can also be set here. Right, keep it as minimum as possible. For now it is 10 here. Alright, so depending on your what your business is expecting, you can basically configure it. Alright, so it is the number of maximum attempts that you get before your user gets locked. Right, and last but not the least, what we have here is lockout effective period. I'm not sure how many people have already seen this one. So what exactly it will do is, as soon as you stop using your Salesforce, and if you're basically browsing on another tab, right, what Salesforce does is it would wait for 15 minutes. And if you are not still using that Salesforce, or a pop-up would come up and it would ask you whether you are still working on that or not, and it would show you a screen which says continue working or cancel or logout. I think continue working or logout are the two buttons that you get depending on whether you are using that Salesforce. If you are using that Salesforce, you would basically click on that continue working, else you'll basically click on logout. Alright, so how that basically helps us in the security aspect is, if you are not near your system and you have not locked your system, after 15 minutes the Salesforce itself will log out from that system. Alright, that is how, even though you have kept your system idle, your data will not be lost. Post that 15 minutes, no one will be able to access. Any person who is there who doesn't have an actual user will not be able to log in after 15 minutes, even though your system is idle. Alright, that is how you can basically make sure this setting is helpful. Even though if you are not using that org for a while, after 15 minutes it would ask you whether you are using that org or not. If you basically do not respond, it would automatically log off. Alright, an activity for you is to basically see what is the time that is been scheduled, or what is the setting that you have in your org. And if it is for 15 minutes, do one thing: open your org and do not touch that for 15 minutes, and see there would be a pop-up that comes up either as a kind of a notification or as a kind of a pop-up box, where it would ask you whether you are continuing working or do you want to log out, is what it would ask for. Alright, these are the settings that you can think of while establishing the security from the org level. Alright, so that is your org level on a high level. Alright, org level security on a high level. Alright, now what we have made sure, we have understood the first layer, where we have made sure that what is that kind of a known IP range. If you have a known IP range where you want your users to basically access your org within that range, you can basically set that using your network access. And if you want to basically restrict your user on the password, you can also use your password policies to establish the policies and help Salesforce establish that security in terms of password. Alright, so it helps us set that restrictions on the password. Alright, so those are the things that you can do in the org level. Alright, now comes the next topic that we have waited for so long, which is nothing but profiles. Alright, so I would let you people read what exactly the profile is. Right, we'll get to know what exactly the profile is just by reading this statement that I'm highlighting currently. Alright, just read through that statement. All right. So what is a profile? What is a profile? A profile in Salesforce is a group slash collection of settings. Profile in Salesforce is a group slash collection of settings and permissions that defines what a user can do in Salesforce. I would repeat, what is a profile? Profile in Salesforce is a group slash collection of settings and permissions that define what a user can do in Salesforce. Alright. Now, if you take a step back and understand what we are doing in the step 3 of a field creation, or while creating an app on step 3, where we are asked to assign the permission to a profile, alright, if you understand those all steps, that basically tells you only one thing, that is nothing but this one. All the things that we did in terms of profile, what exactly we are telling the system is, we are asking the system saying that I'm creating or I'm configuring this profile so that the user who is connected to this profile can only do certain things in Salesforce, right? It is mainly to say that the users connected to this profile can only do certain things in Salesforce. Depending on what you are configuring, he or she can do only those things in Salesforce. Alright. It is mainly meant for defining what a user can do in Salesforce. Alright. With the help of that, you can say that this user can access sales object. This user can access service object. This user needs to have both access to sales and service objects. Or you can say that this person needs to have access to marketing object. Depending on what you configure for a profile, he or she can basically use that profile in Salesforce and he can access those items. Right? Profile in short is a group slash collection of settings and permissions that define what a user can do in Salesforce. Alright, we'll understand how user is connected to Salesforce. For time being, it is a way that we can say that this user can do these things in Salesforce. Right? Now, we have understood the definition of profile, which says that what a user can do in Salesforce. Now, is there any classification between the profiles? Yes, there is again a classification, just like how we have seen in our objects. We have standard profiles and we have custom profiles. What are standard profiles? Standard profiles are the profiles which are given by Salesforce. And what are the custom profiles? Custom profiles are the profiles that we clone from the standard profile, or any other profile. Alright. The ones which are not given by Salesforce are called custom profiles, and the ones which are given by Salesforce by default are called your standard profiles. Alright. Now, so that is the brief of your profiles. That is the brief discussion of your profiles. And if you ask me how we can basically look at a profile and see what all things that a user can do, we have to quickly jump into the Salesforce and see how we can basically look at a profile. Right? So in order to access your profile, click on your setup, then search for your profiles, under administrator, manage user, you have profiles, right? Right? Just like how we have setup menu for configuring all the changes that you want to do in Salesforce, similarly, this profile defines what a user can do in Salesforce. That powerful is this concept. Alright, if you want to basically restrict someone from doing something, it has to happen from your profile level majority of the times. Alright, now these are all the list of profiles that we have. And how to identify whether it's a standard profile or a custom profile? Just by looking at this column which says custom. If that checkbox is checked, that means it's a profile which is of type custom type. Alright, if this checkbox is checked, it means it's a custom profile. Alright, if the checkbox is not checked, that means it's a standard profile that has been given by Salesforce. Alright, now, so far we were discussing a lot about system admin. So system admin is also a profile in Salesforce. Alright, what I'll do is I'll quickly open this profile. Alright, now what I have is I have an information saying that what is the name of my profile, the first section, and what is its license type, user license type, and whether it is a custom or a standard profile. It basically helps me understand whether it's a custom or a standard profile. Sales system admin is not a custom profile, it's a standard profile, and it comes in as soon as you create your org. Alright. So system admin is a kind of a standard profile. Alright. Now the important concept, if I am basically creating or telling the system that these are only the things that they can do if they have this profile, that means they are users connected to this profile, right? So what the definition says, it's a group of settings and permissions. It is a group of collection of settings and permissions that define what a user can do, right? If it is collected to the user, if it can basically control the user, that means this profile should have users connected to it, right? If I read through the statement, it says it defines what a user can do in Salesforce. That means there should be some users connected to this profile. All right. So if I click on this view users button, what it would give me is, it would give me a list of users who are having system admin profile. All right. Currently, I have two users which are having profile as system admin, and only one user is active currently. There is only one user who is active currently. All right. If you go into a normal, let's say, if you go into any projects, there would be many system admins. Since it's a developer edition, or I have only one user who is having system admin access. All right. So now what I have understood is, profile basically controls what a user can do in Salesforce, and if I land onto a profile and if I click on this view users, I can get to know what all users are connected to this profile. How many users or who all people are having a system admin profile or any given profile is what I get to know. Alright. So if I visualize that diagram, here is my profile. It can be any profile. For now, what we are looking at is, we are looking at system admin profile. Alright. System admin profile. If I look at this profile, to this profile, there are n number of users connected to it. Alright. User 1, user 2, user 3, and user 4, and so on. Alright. Now, what user 1 can do depends on to which profile that he is connected to. What user 2 can do depends on what profile he is connected to. Same goes with your U3, U4. Alright. Let's say if I have another profile called, let's say, customer support. Alright. I'm just taking a random profile name here. I'm taking a profile name as customer support, and I have, let's say, users like user CS1. I'm just taking a notation here so that you understand that concept, to indicate that this user I'm talking about is different from the user that you are looking at here. But let me just change. Alright. So I have a different profile here. Alright. I know that profile defines what user can do in Salesforce. Now I have a different profile naming as customer support, and to that profile I have different users. Alright. Different users connected to it. UCS4, right? So now what I'll get to know is, this user can only access those items that are given to him by this profile. Alright, this user can access only certain things that are decided by this profile, right? If you have any other profile, same applies there. Your user can do only those things that your profile basically asks him or allows him to do it. Alright. Now, how can we use this profile concept in our real-time projects? How can we basically use this profile concept in our real-time scenarios? Alright. In real-time scenarios, not all users will be doing all the activities. Your marketing person will not resolve a case. Your let's say the technician will not go to the sales bidding. Alright, he will not generate the quotation. Alright, your customer support will not go to the customer's location and fix that issue. All right. So in Salesforce or any business organization, everyone have their own roles and responsibilities. In any organization, all right, I'm not talking about Salesforce as an organization. I'm talking about a general office or a business organization. All right, I'm talking about a general business organization where not all the people will be doing the same things, right? There would be a category saying that there would be a front end desk where the reception would talk to the customers who are coming in. There would be a kind of a area where you can explore the products that are there. Right? If you basically look at a supermarket, right, there would be a number of people working there. Not all people will be doing the same activity. There would be a kind of a person who will be arranging things in the areas, right? In the market areas, there basically will be people who will be arranging the items. There will be sales helpers who will basically help us out with the directions where to get some items, and there would be some people at the cash counter collecting the cash and basically billing the entire items that we have selected. At the end of the day, there would be a security guy who will recheck if all the items were entered in that bill or not, right? If you take any organization, not all people will be do the same thing. They'll not do the same things, right? There are certain things that they have responsibility for. The security guy's responsibility is no one is taking anything outside from that supermarket. If you are taking that supermarket as an organization, all right, and he or she should also ensure that no one is bringing any harmful items into that supermarket. The roles and responsibilities of that cashier is to collect the cash and basically generate a bill for the items that the customer has selected for. And if it is the sales helper guys or girls, so basically what they do, they basically help out with the information where I can get certain items. All right, and there will be some kind of a people who will be arranging the items in the shelves. Right, everyone have their own roles and responsibilities there. Same applies in your business also. There would be sales rep who will be doing the sales part, and there will be marketing reps who will be handling the marketing side, and there will be service kind of a people where we have the customer support and the technicians who will be handling the service side. All right, just by having that discussion, what I got to know is there are kind of a personas that are there. There are kind of a personas that I have in the system. What is that? I have a marketing rep. All right, I have a sales rep. And I have a customer support people. I'm just categorizing the people into sections. All right, and last but not least, we have technicians as a group. All right, so you will have marketing reps, you have sales reps, you have service reps, and you have technicians. All right. Will the technician will be handling the marketing part? The answer is no. He or she will not be handling the marketing part. Will the marketing rep handle the customer support? He will not do that. That means everyone have their own roles and responsibilities in that organization. All right. So by looking at that person or talking to that person, you'll get to know what exactly he's doing, right? His job is basically a marketing, or you'll get to know whether he's basically a technician, or you'll get to know whether he's a customer support and all. Right? How would Salesforce know that whether he is a customer care guy, or whether he's a technician, or whether he's a service rep, whether he's a marketing rep? The Salesforce doesn't know that part. Salesforce doesn't know that part, where it cannot identify or where it cannot talk to that person and understand whether it's a marketing rep, and it cannot show you only those objects that are basically meant for marketing. Alright, Salesforce is not that intelligent as of now. What we can do is we can make use of your profiles. Right? What we can do is, in order to establish only those things, in order to make sure that marketing rep sees only the things that he needs, that is nothing but marketing objects. Right? For a sales rep, you just need to show him only the sales objects, or the items that needs to that helps him to deliver that sales functionality. For a service team, you just need to give them only those items that will help them achieve that service functionality. Alright. So for that reason, what we are using is we are basically creating a profile in Salesforce. Alright. So what we are doing is we are basically creating a profile saying that this profile will be for marketing reps, and in this profile I'll say what he or she can see. Right? Same goes with your sales rep, same goes with your customer support, same goes with your technician. Right? They have their own roles and responsibilities. How you can configure them? You can configure them in your profiles, saying that technician would not basically look at the sales information, or he or she will not have a kind of a influence there. Right? So that is how you can configure your profile, and you can say that this person can only do these things in Salesforce. Alright. So just by configuring your profiles, what you can do is you can identify the real-time categories of people, right? You can identify the different categories that we have in the organization. What you can do is you can get to know what all things that they do and configure that in your profile and assign that profile to the user. Alright. Understand your business, talk to them, or it's like ask your client what all profiles or what all personas or what all categories of people that they have, and they'll give you that this person basically does this job, and basically identify what all things that they have and group them into categories, create a profile to that particular category and assign that user to that profile. Right? Just by doing that, he or she will only have access that this profile will allow him to do, or he or she can only do those things depending on what profile is allowing them to do. Alright, so that is your real-time application of your profile concept. It basically defines what a user can do in Salesforce. Alright, so that is the brief discussion of your profile concept. Alright, now this is the first section, and now we got to know that there are users connected to this profile. Alright, and the things that I have just below that section talks about what he or she can do in the Salesforce. Alright, if I read through that definition again, I got to know it defines what a user can do, and it also saying that it's a group or a collection of settings and permissions that define what a user can do. Alright, what are those list of settings or groups of permissions? These are those permissions what this definition is referring to. Alright, now, alright. So what we have here in the first section, if you want to control the page layouts that are being displayed to your end user, if you want to control the page layouts that are being displayed or visible to your end user, you can do that from your profile. Alright, the users who are connected to this profile will only see those page layouts depending on what configuration that you are doing here. Alright, so in the page layout section, you have two sections again. One is a standard object layouts, and the second one is custom object layouts. Alright, so what I'll do is I'll scroll down to the custom objects that we have configured the page layouts, which is nothing but our work order. Alright, so how a page layout that needs to be displayed to your end user will be displayed or will be coming to play in your work order object. So can we directly show a page layout to the end user in our work order object? The answer is no. In our yesterday's class, what we got to know is there are kind of a scenarios where the end user needs to select what he or she needs to see, that defines what page layout will be coming up. That concept is nothing but a record type. We have basically done that configuration yesterday. That is why in the page layout section, it is saying that I cannot control just by showing you a page layout, but it says that it varies. The page layout that will be displayed to your end user will be varied on the record type he or she selects. It is saying that I cannot basically decide what page layout I can give it to him. It says that it depends on what record type he or she selects. Alright, if there is a record type configuration, it depends on what the record type he or she is selecting, and depending on the record type that he or she selects, that page layout comes up. If I look at any other object, let's say if I've selected a demo object 1, here I'm saying that this profile, which is nothing but system admin, and the person who is having the system admin access, if they are having access to this object, this is the page layout that they'll see. This is the page layout that they'll see. Alright. If there are any record types, it would say varies by record type. Varies by record type. Alright, varies by record type. If there is a demo Jan 26 object, alright, which says that any person who is accessing this object will only be seeing this demo Jan 26 as a layout. Demo Jan 26 as a layout. Right? So that is what you can do in your profile. If you want to control your page layout settings, you can do it from this page. You can do it from this page. If you ask me, is there any way that I can do it apart from this page? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. What is that way is, I'll quickly go to the work order object, and I've shown you this already, but I just wanted to remind you that point so that you keep that point. Alright, so what I've done is I've gone to the work order tab and I've clicked on view object, and that is where I've landed onto this page. If I scroll down, here is my page layout settings where I have two page layouts. Alright, what I can do is I can click on this page layout. And I can tell the system that for which record type and for which profile I can assign or show a page layout. Alright, so it is a kind of a group configuration that you can do, and if you want to basically do it at a profile level, you can always come to that particular profile. Alright, what is this setting here is you can do it for all the profiles at once from your object detail page. If you want to configure at profile level, you can basically come to your profile and do that change here. Alright, it is like two ways of doing things. This profile will only let you to do for one particular profile, but whereas when you come from your object level, you can do it for all the profiles that you have in the system. Alright, it is a kind of a group or a bulk setting, bulk change, and this is a kind of an individual change. Alright, that is your page layout settings. Alright, if you want to basically edit that, what you need to do is click on edit here, and you will be having an option to basically change it. Alright, I'll get to this part. Why am I not able to change this one? I'll get to this part where I am not able to change this one. For now, we'll just keep this on hold. I'll revisit this concept when we create a new profile in Salesforce. I'll get to this point. Alright, so this is what we have for the page layout. Alright, now if I scroll down a little, first section is your page layouts, where we have the standard objects layouts and the custom object layouts. Why they are segregated is it basically helps us for searching the items little quicker. Alright, now the second item that we have is field level security. That means you can basically control your fields that can be displayed to your end user just by configuring your profiles. Alright, so what we have here is, again, we have standard field level security and we have a custom field level security. Alright, that means that all the standard object field level security can be set here, and if you are basically want to set your field level security for a custom objects, you can basically do it from here. Alright, so what I'll do is I'll basically scroll down to show you the work order object. The reason why I'm selecting only work order is that is what the recent object that we have done. Right, so I'll click on this work order object. I'll click on this view button. Alright, what it does is it will basically bring me all the fields that I have, and it also tells me what level of access that I have. Alright, it is similar to setting your field level security while creating your field. Right, so it is similar to the, do I have the payload? Yeah. So if I go to my object tab, click on this view object, click on the view object. Alright, So you have an option to set your field level security for a given field. Alright. So if I click on this field, and click on set field level security, that is where you'll go to the third option that we usually go. That what we used to do, we have to check and uncheck and basically give the access to only system admin. Alright. So this is for bulk profiles. You can basically give a one field access to, you can basically decide which all profiles can see this field just by configuring this setting. But in the other setting that we are seeing here, it basically talks about on a work order object, I have all these fields. You decide which all fields needs to be visible to this user. Right? It is talking about one profile, and this setting talks about one field, and depending on how many profiles needs to see this field. Right? It is looking the coin from two sides. It is like this. If I have a field, I can decide what all profiles can see this field, what all list of profiles can see this field, profile 1, profile 2, profile 3, profile 4, 5, 6 and all. If I go to an individual profile, there what I can see is, I can see the list of fields on a given object. And I can decide what level of setting that I want to give to that particular field from the profile level. Right, you have profiles here, profile 1, profile 2, profile 3 and all. And if you deep dive into one profile, what you can see is, you can get to know what all fields that I have on that object. You can basically set everything from one place. Alright. So depending on whether you want to basically set that field level security from a field level or from a profile level, that basically changes everything. Alright. If you want to set it for just one field, you want to decide whether it needs to be displayed for all the profiles or not, you can decide this approach. Go to that object, select that field and understand whether it needs to be displayed to that profile or not. You can basically check this checkbox or uncheck that checkbox depending on your need. Coming to this profile, it is nothing but once you land onto a profile, you open an object, you can decide what all access this user needs at a profile level. Right? It is looking at two different sides of a configuration. Looking at two different sides of a configuration. Alright. Either one is a kind of a narrowed view where you are looking at one field and deciding what all profile needs to be given access. Another one is a broader way where I look at all the fields for a given profile and decide what the access needs to be. Alright. What the access needs to be. So depends on your scenario. If you are looking at a field creation and you want to decide this field needs to be displayed for profiles, you can go ahead and do the field level security from the field. And if you are not looking at this particular scenario but you want to decide which all fields needs to have access, which all fields needs to be visible for a given profile, you can do that. Alright. It depends on what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a field creation, go ahead with the first approach where you create that field and give access to all the profiles that needs access to it. Alright. And the second scenario is, if you're creating a new profile, that is where you will revisit your entire field level security from the profile level. Alright. That is what I can give you kind of a guidance. It is always vice versa is also true. Or if you are creating a field and you forgot to give that access to a profile, you can go to that profile and give access to it. And if you are basically creating a profile and you forgot to give the access to a field, then what you can do is you can go to that field and basically give the access to that profile from the field level also. Alright. It depends on what is convenient for you. Alright. There is no kind of a hard and fast rule saying that this is how you need to do it. It is all about, if you know what you are doing, you can basically do it from anywhere. Right? So these are all the list of fields that we have. What is that field level security? Field level security basically talks about whether I want to create this field, whether I want to show this field as a read-only field to the end user, or do I need to give edit access to that end user or not. Alright. So I have bunch of fields. Let's say I have this active field. Do I want to show this to the end user for this profile? If yes, check the read-only access. If he also needs to edit that field, then you need to check another checkbox which says edit access. Just by checking these two checkboxes, what happens is the user can read this information just by the name it says. If you check this checkbox, he or she will be getting the read access. If you check this checkbox, what happens is he will get both read access plus edit access. Read access plus edit access. Right? It is similar to what we have seen on our field level, which says visible and read only. Visible and read only. This visible is basically nothing but your edit, and read only basically is your read access. Right? So that is the similarity that you can identify here. That is your field level security for you. You can either decide whether the field needs to be visible to the end user or whether it needs to be read only. Whether you want to make sure that the field is visible to your end user, or you want to allow him to edit that field. And there is also a third option where you don't want to expose that field. In that case, what you can do is you can basically do not check any checkbox here. If you are dealing with from the profile level, if you are dealing with the profile level, you can basically uncheck both the checkboxes. He or she will not be able to see that one. If you are dealing with the field level, this person, let's say the partner community user, will not be able to see this field because he doesn't have either read access or he doesn't have the edit access on this field. If you don't want to expose this field to this profile, you can basically uncheck both the checkboxes. Right? Same applies in your field level security also. That is your field level security. It decides whether you want to show the field to your end user or not. It also helps you understand whether the visible field should be read only, or the end user needs to edit some information, or he needs to enter some information on that field. Right? So that defines your field level security. Right? So since we are on top of that, I'll pause here to see if there are any questions. If not, we can call it a day. Right? To summarize what we have discussed today, we have basically focused on what is an org level security. Then we have started understanding what is a profile. Alright, in the part of profile discussion, what we have looked at is we have looked at how many types of profiles that we have, how many categories, I would say, how many categories of profiles that we have. We have a standard profile and a custom profile. Standard profiles are the profiles that are given by Salesforce, and the custom profiles are given by or created by the end user or the person who is configuring or building the system. Alright, and in a profile, we got to know that it has a list of settings which defines what a user can do in Salesforce. As a part of that exercise, we have looked at the page layouts, and then we started looking at the field level security. There are also a couple of things that we need to look at in the profile, and we need to also understand how we can create a profile in tomorrow's class. All right. So the task is to basically from today onwards, the task is to basically revisit all the topics which are related to the profiles. Alright, revisit all the topics that are related to the profiles and look from the profile perspective. So far, what we have looked at the concept perspective. If I'm creating an app, I've just created an app saying that this is the app, and I'm just giving an access to system admin. But this time, create an app again and make sure that you understand the concept of how this setting is basically exposing this app to the end user. Revisit that concept in terms of profile perspective. Till now, what we have discussed so many topics, let's say the record types, whether it may be page layouts, whether it may be apps, whether it may be tabs. We have looked at from the concept perspective. If I'm dealing with a record type, I've looked at from the record type perspective. Now what you do is look at from the security perspective. What I mean by that is, just by checking this checkbox for a profile, what is happening is what you need to understand. All right, I'll basically show you how to do that kind of a testing in tomorrow's class. For time being, just revisit that concept and see where all your profile is been coming into the play. Right, just revisit all the concept and see where all your profiles is coming into the play. One easier way to find out is search for your profiles and find out your system admin, and if you scroll down, these are all the places where your profile is coming into the play. These are all the places where your profile is coming into the play. All right. So you can either go through all the concepts that are listed here, or you can basically revisit all the concepts that we have learned so far and understand whether the profile is coming into the play or not. Alright, so that is the task for you. Just by doing this one, you'll get to know better about profiles in our tomorrow's class. You'll understand how this configurations that we are doing here is impacting the changes or the things that your end user can do. Alright, so once we go through this profile concept tomorrow, I'll basically share you a way how we can basically create another user, tag it to a different profile and test it, so that you understand how these changes are impacting that user. Alright, so that is the agenda for tomorrow's class, where we need to go through the profile concept, and we have also permission set that we need to go through. We have gone through the field level security. We'll also go through the object level security in tomorrow's class, and post that we have record level security. Alright, record level security itself will take at least 1 day of discussion. Alright, we'll see how much we can cover in tomorrow's class. Alright, so the task is to basically go through all the profile related concept from the security perspective. Alright, that is the task for today's class. Alright, having said that, I'll open up the session for any Q&A. If you have any Q&A, feel free to ping me and I'll answer that. So basically, if you have different personas, like in our example or in our project that we have discussed, we have sales rep, we have marketing rep, we have technician, we have customer support. These are all the 4 people who are having different kind of things that they need to do in Salesforce. For them, what we need to do is we need to create one profile each. For one kind of a category, let's say customer support category, we need to create one profile. For technician, we need to create one profile. If you are asking me, is that a kind of a repetitive activity? What you can do is, once you have a profile, you can clone it from them. Rather than working on all the settings, you can take a base profile and you can clone it from there, and you have to just remove or add the additional permissions depending on your scenario. Alright, so let's say if your base profile is something like customer support, he or she has very limited things that he or she can do in the Salesforce, and there is a technician who does some activities which are addition to your technician, which are addition to your customer support. You can clone this profile from this profile. I'm just giving an example here, right? You have a profile which basically defined for your CS. What you can do is you can clone this profile and say that these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the additional things that this technician profile can do apart from what CS can do, right? Apart from CS, let's say the things that CS can do, he or she can do 5 more things that the CS cannot do. If you have any other profile which can do additional items, what you can say, you can basically create that profile. You can create that profile P1 or P2, whatever the name is. You can say that you can clone it from this profile and say that he or she can do 1 or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 items on this profile. Right? So it is not that you have to build everything from scratch. You can always clone your profiles and do only those changes that needs to be done, or those changes that user can do once he has been assigned with that profile. Right? So it is not that every time you will be building the things from scratch. It is just that you'll clone those items and do those things what is needed. Is that making sense? You don't need to build everything from scratch saying that this is the first setting that I have to give and all. Right? Always you can make use of the things that is already there. If you are starting from scratch, always you can clone it from an existing profile. Right? All right. I don't see any questions that are pending in my chat window. In case if you have anything, feel free to ping me. I'll wait for 2 more minutes. If we don't have anything, we can call it a day for today. So how do we get the latest profiles anytime? Latest profiles in case if your business identifies a kind of a new category or a kind of a roles that a end user needs to do apart from what they already have, that is where a request to create a new profiles comes into the play. All right. If you are asking me how do I create a new latest profile in the system that we have not yet explored, we'll be looking at that concept in tomorrow's class. Right. So modification, if you have already an existing profile, that is where the request of modifying that profiles comes in, just like asking you to basically expose that field to that profile or basically assign that page layout to that profile. That is all the request that will come to you. All right. What I understood is field level security is where we restrict the end user in accessing some fields which he works on. Yes, the field level security is not just restricting, it is also exposing that field. Right? Depending on your requirement, you will either expose or restrict that field. Depending on the scenario or depending on the requirement, you'll either expose that field to your end user or you'll basically restrict that field. As in, like, you will basically not show that field to that end user. All right. Any requirement, it is not that you or I will be deciding whether that field needs to be exposed or not. It depends on your requirement and what exactly your client is basically trying to get here. Right. So that is the field level security, and it applies for all the other topics as well. If your client is not willing to expose an object to your end user, he or she doesn't need to have an access to create a record, we need to restrict that. Right? So that is where your profile comes into the play, and we'll discuss that concepts in tomorrow's class. Right? So Vijay, to answer your question, it is a base level that we need to have to understand any cloud. All right. All right, guys. I'll wait for another minute. In case if you have anything, just ping me. I'll take that question and we can call it a day. In case if you don't have anything, I'll wait for another minute and we can drop off. So every day, if you are following, we are building one piece in that project that we have seen in our starting day of our class. All right. If you understand, yesterday we have built the record types. Day before yesterday we have built the page layouts, and we have connected the objects. All right. So every day we are building one piece in our project. It is just that you need to understand where exactly it applies, and maybe if you have time, you can basically extend that understanding. If I'm writing only just one validation rule, you can basically think of other validation rules and you can also write them, right? All right. I don't see any new questions coming in. That's all for today. Thanks for joining. We'll connect tomorrow.